So I have a lot more videos shot that need edited and put out on the channel, and I have more logs to cut on the mill for the log cabin style workshop, but I'm gonna be sidetracked here for I don't know, Lord knows how long. I found out that I have a leak in the water line. The spring is dangerously low, so I have to take care of that. I'm going to shoot those videos of the process of going through finding that leak, so that whoever comes next knows what to do. Because right now, Dad's been going since 2014, and I the only one that really got into this. So when I'm gone, hopefully these videos will help them out, but I'll catch you on the next video on that and explain more about it later. Okay, earlier today, I was driving up with the tractor to get a couple skids to stack some lumber down there that I saw in the sawmill for the new building. And as always, I try to once in a while run up to the spring and check the spring to make sure everything's okay. And what I found was not good. Our spring holds, I think, 50 some inches of water, our spring houses. And at 2 o'clock today, they were down to 9 inches. So I checked everything down, the 3 houses at the spring services, make sure there wasn't something running. And I gave it another hour, and I came back up and measured again, down to 3 inches. So in an hour, it used all the water that was coming in plus 6 inches. So it's evidently a bad leak somewhere. That's the downside to having this spring. It's great water, can't beat it, but there's over probably around 1,000 feet of pipe buried between the spring houses and the 3 houses that it services. Over the years, we've had a lot of leaks. The majority of them, and I'll show you this later, are on the line that goes out to my house and my son's house. The main line, I can't remember maybe once there being a leak on it. The main line come down the hill. And I think my grandfather, when he turned this to plastic, because originally before the houses or the 2,000 gallon storage tanks were up here, there was just little tanks up here, and it was actually galvanized pipe to his house and my dad's house. But then we put these in, he buried plastic line down to his house and dad's house, and I think he used the thicker walled plastic pipe when he ran down there originally, but when he ran over to my places years later, when I built in 77, well, actually my uncle put a mobile home out beyond me before that, so when he ran that line out there, probably, I was in the Army, probably 75 or 76. Around 1976, I believe he did that. I think he used the thinner wall. I know he used the thinner wall plastic, and we've been having leaks over the years, for 15 years or 20 years now. Dad's been going almost 10 years. Before, when I was working, Dad would take care of them. He'd track them down. And 1,000 foot of buried line, that's sometimes difficult, all the time difficult. As you'll see here on this one here, when I finally find it, which I will. There's a process to go through. Dad would do that. And after Dad died, I had to do it probably half a dozen times now. I just did it last July, had a big leak. This leak's got to be pretty big to lose that much water in an hour, go from 9 inches down to 3 inches in an hour. What I'm going to do, because once I'm gone, it'll be up to my brother, who's younger than I am, and my son to figure this out. Neither of them have been part of the process as of yet. So what I'm going to do is video this one and hopefully give them some tips on what to look for, what to do. But there's always challenges along the way. Now, I came up here, like I said, 2 o'clock and found it was down 9 inches. I think that reservoir, if I remember right, there's 56 inches of water in each of them when they're full. So it was down to 9, and I didn't do anything. But I come up an hour later and it was down to 3 inches. Now, since then, what I do, let me see if I can check. I catalog that in, keep track of it. Here you can see at 2 o'clock it was 9, and at 3 it was 3. At 4, I closed the main valves, which I'll show you in one of these videos here why I'm trying to fix this, to my house and to my son's house. That line of which 99% of leaks have been in there, that thinner walled stuff, but I replaced most of it with the thick wall by now. But anyway, at 3 I closed that. At 4 I come up, the water didn't come up at all. Now at 6 it's 2 3/4 inches down, 1/4 inch. So that's the kind of stuff you run into trying to figure this out. Now, in one sense, you know, I lost 6 inches in an hour with everything open, shut that valve, and didn't lose any more. So that would tell you the leak was out in that line, which it probably is. But I would have expected that the water was started coming up. The level was started coming up, and it's not. It's staying. It might even went down 1/4 inch. So that has me a little confused and what to try next. I mean, I'm going to let this go overnight. I'll probably just leave my valve shut tonight, let it go overnight, and see if it recovers. I'm a little concerned that it didn't come up a little bit. I mean, I'm happy it stopped going down, because it'd be dry if it dropped as fast as it was dropping when I found it. But all right, well, and then I'll do the video to walk through the process of what it takes to try to fix these crazy things. It's a long process. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. You know, you go by experience at this point of where you want to look and where you don't. But you isolate these valves and try to come up with what direction is logical to go. So at this point, I guess I'll leave this my valve closed, see what we look like in the morning, and go from there. Try to find it. I'll walk this line from the reservoir. From the reservoirs, I'll walk the line down, clear down to where the valve is shut off, and video that to show them guys exactly where this line runs, because there's more roads up here now than there was, and it's not as logical just looking at the paths, the four-wheeler paths, of where the line really is. So I'll do that and give them something that they can go back to and look at and at least know where the lines are. Like I said, knock on wood, we haven't had any leaks up the mountain here, but who knows. Oh, day one. I hope I'm not too many days, but I've had these things go on for a week. Probably gonna have to put my backhoe back on the tractor because it will mean digging, which something Dad never had. He did his by hand. I do at least have the backhoe, but gotta try to find the leak first. And we've been getting a thunderstorm at least once every day, so looking at the ground, you can't really tell anything. And I've only one time had a leak come up through the ground. They always stay down in, and that means you probe for them, and I'll show you that later. So, day one, see you tomorrow. Okay, day two here, trying to figure out this leak in the water line. Back up the spring. I measured it. I have the valve shut off to my house and my son's house. It's the main line that runs lateral. It went up 6 inches overnight. Well, actually it went up only about 3 inches overnight, because it was 2 3/4 and now it's 6 inches. So that is an eighth of an inch an hour, which with the amount of water coming in is craziness. So this is a thought pattern. Like I say, I'm videoing this as much for not just to put on the YouTube channel to show people what you get into when you have land and have things like springs and stuff, but for whoever's next to determine to try to maintain this spring, because right now Dad and I were the only ones that have gotten into these leaks over the years, over the last 20-25 years. So I just want to document this so people know what to try and what to start. But what we're looking at here, originally, like I said yesterday, I came up here and found there was 9 inches of water was all was left in the reservoirs back there. There's 2 of them, 1,000 gallons each. And I just walked away from it for an hour because I wanted to see what it was doing, and came up and it was down to 3 inches. So it dropped 6 inches in an hour. So I shut that valve off going to my house, and it stopped dropping, but it didn't really come up. I mean, you drop 6 inches an hour and we stopped that, or it'd have been dry if I wouldn't have shut that valve off. But it didn't really come up to mount to anything. And overnight, with that line shut off, it only come up about 3 inches in 15 hours. That's not good. That tells me that I must have a big leak over in my line, because I shut it off and it stopped it from dropping 6 inches an hour. But I must also have a leak somewhere else that's taken what we are bringing in. So the thought pattern now is, besides, going through the process of probing for leaks, which I'll do, but I'm going to shut off the line to my dad's house, and then we'll wait an hour or two and come up and measure it and see if it came up at all. And then I might have to come up and shut the valves off right at the tank itself. But anyway, one step at a time. Sometimes this gets so confusing. Sometimes you figure out you got it figured, and it does the opposite of what you think it's going to do, and it just doesn't make sense. But that's what I'm going to do now. Run down and shut those valves off. Later on today, or maybe tomorrow, because this can take a week to figure this out. I'm going to come up and video walking the main line, so that the next person knows where the main line is from the spring house down. Hopefully it isn't in that line, and I'll explain that when I'm walking it, why that's going to be difficult. But all right, I'll catch you a little bit later. Hopefully, as the days go by, as the hours go by, as the time goes by, trying to find this, the attitude, my attitude will start to turn toward frustration. So hopefully I can keep that frustration out of these videos as much as possible, but who knows. Catch you later. Okay, I'm gonna show in this video where some of these valves are, so that whoever's next knows where they're at. There's Dad's house down there, so you come up the end of the yard, and then in the path that heads up to the spring, and you'll come over here. This first valve is the valve that I have shut off. It goes out that way to our houses, my house and Joe's house. This is just, there's bags of sawdust that go in over that. Then these two metal pieces. Then there's just a tarp that lays over it with some blocks and stone and stuff to hold the tarp down. So there's not really any digging you have to do here. That valve is now shut off. What I want to do next is shut Dad's valve off. It's down this way somewhere. We'll walk down this path. You can visually see this path grown over, but you can tell it's a path. Somewhere down here there's a line that runs over to Dad's house. It's right here. These blocks and that metal piece on it. So what I'm going to do now is dig that up or get that uncovered, and that line runs out through here over to his house. I'm going to cover that up, or I'm going to shut that valve off and wait a couple hours and see what the water level does up there. All right, I'll catch you in the next video. So while I'm waiting for some time to go by, I shut Dad's line off, down valve off down there, and we'll take another measurement up there in an hour or so. But I might as well walk the main line, try to show whoever's going to do this next where the main line is. So I told you where this valve was. So starting at that valve, you can see a path, or a old path up through here. Not the path that we're running the four-wheelers and gators on right now. That's to the right of this. But the main line comes up through here. And you can clearly see an old path that they used to dig the line. I never really, I think we had one leak in this line, and it was somewhere in this area right in here. But I'll show you later why this, if we get a leak in this line, it's not good. But anyway, how we find leaks. Right there is a metal rod that I use. Dad used the same one. We know basically where the lines are somewhat, and we push that down in as far as we can and try to come up with water on the end of it. So that's how fun it is trying to find these leaks. So we're gonna walk up through here, and this path is, okay, from there to over to here, where you can clearly see they made the path. You got, let's see, 9 foot. You know, I don't know exactly where the line is within that 9 feet. You know, I can guesstimate it probably in the center. Some places you can see a little indent where you might have been settlement. But you run up by here, stay in that path. I could get the backhoe up in here if I found a leak. And I'm a little concerned right now what my measurements overnight showed me, that we only came up 1/8 inch an hour, 3 inches in 15 hours with my line shut off, which my line is the vast majority of the leaks have been out that way. Now, as I said, when I found it, it was going down 6 inches an hour. So I stopped that by shutting my line off, which would indicate to me that the leak, there's a big leak out that way. But the fact that it didn't go up more than 1/8 inch an hour scares me about there being a leak in this main line somewhere too, because we should have recovered more than that. Now in this area here where I'm starting to hit, you start to get into so many springs. As you can see, there's a lot of vegetation here. So many springs that I don't know how I would ever determine what is a leak and what is water that just come in here naturally. But you run up, you can see the path still. You run up here. And you're gonna get to the base of the pond, which is right there. Right there's the valve for the pond. There's the pond. That pond was put in such a way that it leaks. I mean, it was just dug in there. You can see how wet this ground is. So there's always water in this area. That pond needs dredged and a liner put in it on the list. You know that list? Like right here. There's water here. See, you poke that down there, there's water there, you can see it. But that don't tell me that's water line leak. That's probably this area. And right up here, there's the pond, which is low. There's water, running water, but you have a spring that comes out of the hill here. I always intended to, now that I've seen this years ago, that I should take this, come up here with the hoe and rework this pond to come out into that way more so that it caught this spring. There's a lot of water there, but that I know comes naturally, so you can't figure that's a leak. So there's the pond, and the line comes up below the pond, and you can just still see the indent. And there's springs all up through here. Like there, I can sink that down in there pretty good, and it's wet, but you know, I can't determine that's a leak. That's what I was saying. This main line, if the leak is in this main line, I don't know how I'll ever find it. Or how anybody would ever find it. We've been lucky enough that we haven't had that problem, but you know, how long does luck hold out? Until it doesn't, right? So you can still see a little bit, and then over there is a four-wheeler path. There's off to the left of that a good 15 feet. And the main line's still running up through here. And it's all wet up in here because it's still. You got springs that come in here from different directions, little ones that dry up different times of the year. We've been getting enough thunderstorms that staying wet up here. There's a tub that's put in that Dad caught a little spring and run it down into the pond, but you can see that there's nothing running in there now. That's usually running pretty good. And the inlet of it pretty dry. You come up through here, and way up in there, you can barely see the spring house, but we're coming up on it. About to cross a road that takes us out around. Here's where I got them hemlock, drug them hemlock out of. That goes up and meets the main road that comes up to the spring. But this one goes right through that and comes up. Over the hill a little bit. And somehow I suspect probably runs up through here because the valves to the tank themselves are down in there. Which is going to be my next thing I probably end up doing, uncovering those valves, isolate both tanks, and then after I run this test on Dad's line shut off, see if I can determine anything happening there. I'll isolate these valves of the tanks and see how much I'm really should be getting with the water we have coming in from the spring. How much it should go up an inch with no lines open. That's going to give me an indication how big the other leak is. There's my gloves I left up here yesterday. I wondered where were. Okay, so I don't know that's enough time to measure this and know anything about Dad's line, but I wanted to walk that line anyway to leave a record for the next person of where that main line is and the difficulty you're going to have if you think the leak is in that line. So we'll carry on here, and we're far from knowing what to do here. You know, I showed you use this to do the probing, but where to probe, you know, you have some guesses, but you don't want to just go out there and start probing without some educated way of knowing, well, the leak has to be this direction, has to be that direction. So that's what we're trying to determine now. So here's the frustrations you run into trying to figure this out, this water line. When I come up at 9:30, I have marked down here at a reading of 6 inches of water. So I went down and shut off Dad's line valve to Dad's house. I come up at just 15 minutes later. No, come up at 10:45, and I had a reading of 7 inches, which told me it went up an inch in less than an hour. I thought, well, that's where the leak is, Dad's line. So I come up at 10:30 and it's still 7 inches. Now I come up at 1 o'clock and it's 7.5 inches. So I really have no clear indication yet what's going on. I can't imagine in an hour it went up an inch, and then all of a sudden nobody's using it because everybody's shut off. All of a sudden it decided to stay the same for an hour and now go up a half inch in 2 hours. So maybe my reading right out of the gate was 7 instead of 6. I don't know. That's where your head gets after working on this for, and this is only day 2. So what I'm gonna do right now, because I believe there's enough water coming into that reservoir that it should be coming up considerably. What I'm going to do right now is shut the valves off that are right at the bottom of both of those tanks, both of those reservoirs. So there'll be no water leaving either reservoir. And then from there I'll wait an hour or 2 and come up and see what we got from there. See where that leads me. All right, we continue the saga in the next video. Okay, still working on this leak. This would be day 3. Actually 2 full days, but the morning of day 3 after I found it. I shut those valves last night on both tanks like I think I said in the last video. The one tank went up 20 inches, 21 inches actually, and the other, that had the most water coming in. The other tank went up 10 inches. So I opened them up. I calculated that once they equalize, both opened in the system, once they equalize, I should have around 27 inches in both tanks. I went looking in the main line, probing for leaks, and waited a half hour and came up in both tanks are at 25. Now, I don't know if that means, you know, that calculations are off or whether it leaked that much already. But that would have been with water coming in for a half hour. I was expecting it leaks. I found something down the main line that I'm going to ride down on Gator here, and then I'll show you what I found and show you how difficult this is to figure out. Okay, in this area here, there's a lot of springs, so it's difficult to tell what you're seeing is what you're seeing. We had a bad thunderstorm last night, overnight, and you can see where water does run down through here. So when I find something like this, you don't know exactly what it might be. So I run the probe down through there. And that gets rid of that water for a little bit. But it is rising back up through there. Now that could very well be a spring, or it could be the line leaking down there. It's just impossible for me to know. I probed the area and come up with dryness other than this one area right here. I don't even know if the line's over this far. I would have suspected the line to be more over in here, but that's impossible for me to know too. That this section of the line was put in the 70s, I think. So I guess what I'm gonna have to do from here is do a little digging here. Probably wasting my time, but while I'm waiting to see if that those tanks go up or down, I'll dig here and see what I come up with a little bit by hand. All the houses are shut off, so the only thing that's pressurized right now is the main line from the tanks clear down to the first valve, which is a big section of line. But I might be wasting my time here, but we're going to dig this up by hand and see what we come up with. I'll catch you in the next video. Digging a hole video. So I didn't have to dig real deep here to determine the water more on the surface. It's coming from the side. It's not coming up in the hole now because I got below where the water was coming in. So this isn't the leak. Pretty confident of that. It's dry down in there except for when the water runs into it. A lot of clay down there. You can see the water right there running down in. So this is the kind of stuff you gotta look for. And this is one hole, probably many, before I find this leak. But I'm pretty confident that isn't it. So catch you in the next video. Okay, still trying to determine where this leak is. Got the figures here. I ended up opening the tank, as I said earlier, and you see the video where I thought I might have found a leak in the main line, but determined it wasn't. But since I opened the main tank, or the main tanks to the main line, everybody else shut off. All three houses shut off at valves down below. The water went from 25 inches up to 27 inches in a couple hours there. So at 12 o'clock noon, I opened the main line that services my house and my boy's house. It was 27 inches, the tanks. At 12:47, the tanks were already down to 25 inches. At 1:03, I dug up the pit in my backyard and shut off a valve in that pit that just services my house. In other words, that lateral to my house and my boy's house is open. There is a line that just shuts off my house, closed, and the rest of that line is still open. When I come up to check it after I shut that off, it had dropped another 2 inches. So it went from 27 inches down to 23 inches in an hour. So that tells me the leak, now it's raining out, of course that's nice, but that tells me the leak is somewhere in the line headed to my house from my boy's house. So now what we're going to do is determine whether the leak is in my line from a pit in my backyard or still in that main line. I know it's a little confusing, but so we'll wait an hour or so and see what the tank does from here. Catch you in the next video. Okay, I might have found something here. I might have found a leak. I'll do a recap video if this is it and if I get to fix it here. But either way, at the end I'm going to do a recap video, step by step, what I did and what I shut off, how I determined where this leak was. But you isolate the lines to where you down to where you want to look, you start probing. I found a area here that looked a little wet. Usually the water don't come up unless it's a big leak. This is a big leak. So you drive your probe down in and it's soft. And you can see when that comes out, the water dripping off the end of it. So I'm almost positive that's where the leak is. I really don't want to put the backhoe on. Probably end up digging this by hand. Get down in there and see what I found. So I'll see you in the next video once I do that. Okay, so I dug down where I was probing, where you seen that probe, and I hit water, and got down to the line last night and felt the bottom of the line. There is a crack in it. It must be sitting on a stone or something. So I walked away from it for the night because I needed parts to fix it. And I can see it, well, as you can see, the hole filled up pretty good with water, which the good thing and the bad thing, my calculations keep showing me that even with this line valved off, I don't think I'm recovering as much water up at the reservoir as I measured that I should. So there's two possibilities. One would be having our leak somewhere, and the other would be that valve's not holding. So hopefully this means that valve's not holding. And once I fix this leak, we'll be back in business full bore. But it's not gonna make it easy to fix this leak if that valve's leaking after I cut the line. But anyway, we found the leak. I decided to dig this up by hand for two reasons. One, I didn't want to put the backhoe back on the Mahindra because I need that winch a little bit longer. And two, I would have had to tear down two sections of fencing in the goat pasture to get over here with the tractor. So I dug it by hand, and the old-fashioned way, the way Dad would have done it anyway. And we found it, and I'll put together a video with all these videos recapping everything I did to find the leak, and hopefully in the future when I'm gone, someone can look at it and determine the best way to go about it. Alrighty, catch you in the next video. Okay, I've finally taken the time to shoot the final video for the water line leak. It's actually been quite a while since I fixed the leak, but I jumped right back on the sawmill and just haven't gotten over here. But I wanted to recap this a little bit for my son and my brother, whoever's next in the barrel here, looking for these leaks. But if you remember the last video, found a leak down here, dug it up by hand, bailed out the water, and I cut a piece of pipe out of there, which I didn't video, put a new section in, and put some sawdust in under it and on top of it, and I'll fill this back in here in a little bit. But I did determine that that valve over there that shuts off my lines was leaking through. So that was a good thing. I was able to fix it even though it was leaking through without too much problem. And that took some worry out of my mind as far as having a second leak, because once we fixed this, then the spring went right up and started overflowing within I think it took a day and a half, and it was overflowing. So we've been back in business for a while now, but I figured I need to get this last video shot so I can get this one in the books. But anyway, that's what you get into when you have a water line leak. And hopefully I gave them some ideas of how to isolate valves and how to isolate lines as far as where to start probing, where to start looking. And I don't know actually how we ever find them, but thank God we do come up with them. We always have. But that's how you do it, boys. Good luck. Pup and I will be watching. We'll give you a little guidance. Just keep on trucking. You guys will find it. See ya.